School students as young as 5 tied to chairs, locked in cars and hit by teachers and school staff. These are just some of the grim allegations of how disabled students are treated. 730's obtained documents under Freedom of Information which reveal more than 200 reported incidents were investigated during the past 2 years in New South Wales alone. Parents of these students are outraged that the government's failed to act and protect the children in its care and that some of the staff in question still have jobs. This exclusive report by Brigid Glanville.
G'day, look what I've got over here for you, Austin. Ah, good boy.
Austin Franks should be in school. He's not wagging and he's not sick.
You can have some yoghurt for dessert with some strawberries.
For this 16-year-old, the classroom has become an impossibility, as his experience at school last year sent him into a destructive spiral.
He was continually self-harming. He was vocalising in a moaning, sad behaviour. I think he was incredibly anxious. I think he was down. I think he was depressed.
Down the beach, Austin. Down in the beach.
Austin would present a challenge for any school. He is severely autistic, non-verbal and has an intellectual disability.
Good boy, Austin.
But Pennant Hills High School in Sydney accepted the responsibility of educating him alongside his mainstream peers. Things went terribly wrong.
He would come home covered in blood. I would ring the school and say, "What's happened?" And they'd say, "Oh, we don't know what's caused it." Because they failed to mention he was being pushed around with boxing buttons or screamed at or not allowed to go to the toilet to access his sandwiches or anything like that. Prohibited practices were applied to him. The use of boxing battens that were about 1/2 metre wide. There were 2 to 4 of those ones. Sometimes they were used by staff. Sometimes the staff employed children in the classroom to push him and transition him from the classroom to other places by physically using the battens.
They kind of treated him like he was an animal, not like a child, and it was very sad.
As Austin wasn't able to tell his parents what was happening, the school allowed the family to employ psychology student Tanya Shenoy to watch what was going on in the classroom. She witnessed the alleged abuse.
Well, I was quite shocked that it was the teachers that weren't doing what they were supposed to with him. They weren't helping him with his schoolwork as such. He was kind of just left to his own devices at the back of the classroom, just kind of pushed there, out of the way, out of sight.
Tanya raised her concerns with the school. She says she was told they were using the boxing pads for protection for students and teachers, as Austin could be violent.
Using those boxing bags probably makes him more upset, and nothing was changed because the very next time I was in, they were still there.
Austin's psychiatrist also wrote a letter demanding action.
The observed interactions between school staff members and Austin raised very significant concerns about alleged maltreatment. These concerns, I believe, have so far not been adequately addressed by the school.
The psychiatrist was so concerned she reported it to the Department of Family and Community Services. Austin's parents pulled him out of school and investigations are still underway.
Nobody wants to see their child hurt. They would hope that in a place where there are mandatory reporters, a school's supposed to be a safe environment.
It shouldn't have got to a position where there needed to be that sort of device used in the classroom, and it points to the complexity of ensuring that we provide as many opportunities as possible for children with challenging behaviours to be educated in a mainstream environment.
Austin's story is just one of hundreds of reported incidents in New South Wales state schools in the past 2 years. 730 has obtained documents under Freedom of Information which show the Education Department is investigating 246 complaints of alleged neglect and abuse of disabled students.
It's alleged that a male casual school employee kicked a Year 7 student on the back while seated on a wall, causing him to fall.
It's alleged that a female teacher grabbed a student by his wrists, throwing him against a wall and whacking him across the head.
It's alleged that an assisted school travel driver left an 8-year-old student in a van for 4 hours.
There are cases where children are being dragged across playgrounds, heads being hit into walls, locked into cupboards, arms twisted, kids screaming out in pain, being physically assaulted, and it's being observed by others. And the department has said that's not reportable conduct. So I don't understand it. The issue comes with what is reportable conduct.
Family advocate David Roy recently appeared at a New South Wales parliamentary inquiry into educating children with special needs. He raised concerns about how cases were being investigated.
How does the department decide cases? That, to me, is a mystery. And I think that's one of the clarities that needs to be made to say, you know what is abuse?
One shocking case is the alleged abuse of Thomas Maker North. He also has autism, is non-verbal, he can't go to the toilet on his own and has an intellectual disability. Last year, Thomas was attending Manning Gardens Public School in Taree on the New South Wales North Coast. His mother was horrified when she discovered the school had made 2 chairs specifically designed to restrain Thomas, who was just 5 years old.
When I saw the chairs, it was shown like it was a great show and tell piece. And the words that were used when I looked and I was just gobsmacked was, would it be better if we got some more aesthetically pleasing chairs? And that was the exact words that was used.
Georgina Maker North asked for a meeting with the school, but she says she still doesn't know why they were using the chairs, for how long and how often.
Given that they were called Thomas's chairs straight out, I can only guess that it was probably at least every day, probably for hours a day. I can only guess this. And given that there were 2 chairs, that tells me that they move him from classroom to lunchroom and still have him in a chair.
Where's Thomas go? There he is.
Georgina pulled her son out of school and made a complaint to the New South Wales Education Department. In July, the department wrote to her.
The school's been instructed to dispose of the chairs and the therapy pool and fence.
That is it. There's no answers to any of my questions. It just says that something might have happened.
Georgina moved her family to the Central Coast and is now considering sending Thomas to a special needs school after her terrible experience in the mainstream system.
Maybe I shouldn't have been so trusting. You feel like that if you send your child to a school, they're going to be safe and treated like, any other child in their care.
I was shocked and horrified to see a device like that being used in New South Wales public school.
But the principal's still there.
Look, I'm not sure. Obviously, it would not be appropriate for me to intervene in an operational disciplinary finding. That is an independent process, and it should be. But in relation to, are you asking, did I intervene in the discipline that was meted out? No, that's not an appropriate use of my role.
Like anybody, Brigid, I'm actually shocked. It's a horrific way of trying to deal with kids, particularly kids who are very vulnerable. But what we've seen there very clearly is an absolute failure by the department and from this government in terms of addressing students who are most vulnerable and most need.
The New South Wales Education Minister has instructed the department to review teacher training practices.
We are doing a variety of things in relation to providing additional support to principals as well as additional training to staff. I think it's very important to note that this is a very complex issue for teachers to deal with.
She tries to bore him to sleep.
It's unlikely Austin Franks will ever return to school. He's just far too traumatised.
It's incredulous to think that this could be going on in 2016, 2015. It's something that you might have thought would happen in Dickensian times or back in the 1950s. There is empirical evidence out there to support school staff. The education department are just letting everyone down.